Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I am your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
How do you do? And welcome to another episode of Embarrassing Ourselves in Front of Thousands of People.
I don't think we're thousands of people. Don't get your hopes up. Maybe 20 max, I would say.
Hey, who's ever listening to us? Are you lacking for excitement or something in your life? Are you looking for something different? Is this why you're listening to this podcast?
I don't know. Let's move on. We were going to talk about pressure in education.
Yes.
Now, I think that a lot of times there is this pressure of excellence, like you need to do better, you need to strive to do better.
Mm-hmm. I think there's too much. I've always felt that way. I always felt that there was, especially now, I was hoping, there was a lot of pressure, of course, when I was in school, because our parents were from, of course, the Depression generation, and they really wanted their kids to succeed. They were worried. They were really worried about financial stability, and they really wanted us to succeed. So there was a lot of pressure on us to do our best and to succeed, to the point that, sometimes what depended, there were some kids that were, it was the hit your kid generation. So I had friends, if they didn't cooperate, whatever, their parents would really beat them. I think the way their parents would beat them in my day would have gotten them a trip to Child Protective Service, a visit from Child Protective Services today. But I look around, and sad to say, with your generation, I hate to say it, I think it's gotten worse. The parents aren't about to hit the kids or anything, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure. Even in the preschool, you bring your kid for an interview. In some preschools, little kid, little 2-3-year-old kid, bring him for an interview. I see a lot of pressure among the Jewish kids, especially, to get into the right high school. I don't know, maybe there's the same pressure among the non-Jewish kids or the non-religious Jewish kids to get into just the right high school.
It depends, but the thing is, we have like private schools where it's like your only option is private school. Even if you're like broke, poor, living off a WIC, you need to send your kid to an all boys or all girls Jewish day school. It needs to be a private school because it's just not going to have the right amount of chinuch and education that a public school would have. So that's the disadvantage in the Jewish community when it comes to that kind of pressure. And the problem is, I think it's the school's fault. The schools actually require all this information, all these rules, all this pressure. It's like they're expecting everybody to be a Gedolei Hador, some big, rabbi, as soon as they enter, first, second, third grade. And I think within that, you also have a lot of people that just snap. They can't handle the pressure, and they go off the derech. They fry out. They go ahead and stop becoming religious because it's too much. And
I agree with you 100% on that. Yes, I do. I think, and I've often felt that there is way too much pressure in education. And the real question is why? The point of education is for your child, is for an adult, somebody to learn skills. On why, putting pressure on someone to learn,
they think it's going to work.
You're defeating your own purpose. Especially in my day, they thought if you didn't understand something, that if they screamed at you, that it would jumpstart, like a cable boost. It would jumpstart the brain process. And research has shown the exact opposite. That not only does it not help, it does the opposite, because the adrenaline starts running. And once the adrenaline runs, you've got the fight or flight instinct. And that totally, I know when I was a kid, I would try to explain to my teachers and parents, I couldn't find the words for it. But when they would scream at me, my brain would shut off. I could not think. And they thought it was laziness on my part and scream even more.
Yeah, people think that you have to suffer, you have to have pain in order to go ahead and be a productive person in society. And there's going to get to a point that people are going to realize that you can have inner peace. You don't need to yell and scream at anybody, and you'll get the same amount of work done, if not more. And
For
people have
sure.
that, they have that fear, and
Mhm.
it's very frustrating and it's very unnerving. I remember being in high school and seeing how like the school started becoming more and more religious. They wanted less curricular activities. They wanted to get rid of the school newspaper. They wanted to get rid of the graduation. They wanted to get rid of the school yearbook. They wanted to extend Sunday school an extra hour. They were trying all these different things because they felt that it would bring more appeal to the school. They wanted to add more and more rules. And I personally didn't care for it because it's like I'm responsible. I felt at the time of being 15, 16, 17 that I was a responsible young adult, that I didn't need someone to constantly tell me what to do. And because of them constantly telling me what to do, I got very frustrated and angry with the system. And that's the other problem when it comes to at least the Jewish system, school system, is that they think of like, oh, this is going to help the kids by going ahead and just adding these more rules and forcing them to do more stuff. It's going to keep them, occupied. No, it's just going to piss them off. They're being a teenager itself is a challenge.
Mhm.
Um, and adding more pressure to them, I think is just, I don't know. It could be unhealthy.
I think so too. I think first of all, kids need a little downtime. And as far as learning goes, um, you know, if someone's having trouble or someone's not learning as quickly, whatever, there are many factors that go into that. And just help the kid, help the kid to understand what is going on rather than having it this horrible grueling selection process. It's just totally unnecessary.
But on a similar note, when it comes to education, people think that if I'm successful in high school, successful in middle school, I'll be successful in life. And that's not necessarily true. It really, if you go ahead and you get straight A's in high school, that doesn't mean you're going to get straight A's in life. It
So
doesn't
true.
mean you're going to make money, a lot of money. It really doesn't. And if I was, I think I would take more risks if I was in high school. If I realized that then, where it doesn't matter.
I
It
had
really.
I had one education professor at Towson who was talking to the class about basically the anthropology of like some of the South American, some of the third world tribes. And she says when a young man is 12 or 13, whatever the tribe that is, they put him through this test where either they give him a spear and leave him out in the woods or in the jungle, and he has to hunt and fish for himself and come back alive, or they tie him up and they put all these needles in him and put him through all this pain. And then after about a half an hour of pain, they untie him, they congratulate him, and he's now a full-fledged adult with the voting rights of the tribe and can get married and whatever he wants, whatever any adult in that tribe does. So she said to our class, which is worse, a half an hour of pain or maybe 1 or 2 days of meeting a challenge out in the jungle, and then you're a full-fledged member of your society and with all the rights thereof, or, she said, the horrible torture of years and years and years of torture that we put American teenagers through.
Yeah.
And she put it in just those terms, years of torture, until they're finally 18 and are considered, full-fledged adults.
Not
She
even
says, which is
full-fledged.
worse.
Not even full-fledged. At 18, you can vote and you can get kicked out of your parents' house and not have any legal problems about it. But you can't smoke until 21. now. You can't drink until 21. You know, you can't rent a car until you're 25.
Yeah, that's why I don't understand that one. I mean, it
Uh,
should be one age across the line, period, finish. I mean, 18, at 18, you can get married, you can work, you can get married, you can own a business,
you can enlist in the army at
you know,
17.
right. Well, at that, actually, do you know that's against the Geneva Convention?
Really?
That, yeah, I think, was it the Geneva Convention or something else? I think United Nations, because under the Iran-Iraqi war, they were actually using 14-year-old boys. And there was a proposal in the United Nations that there should be an international law that nobody is conscripted into the army before age 18, which would put the United States in violation of that. That's one of the things that they were debating at the time.
Yeah, you know how many countries violate the Geneva Convention?
No kidding, duh.
It's
But
whatever. This is just semantics.
but this should be, 18, that's it, period, finish, drink, smoke, whatever. Come on. What
It's
games are we playing?
well, it's because it's this is the thing, and I find it so frustrating. It's like you're trying to protect the youth, right? You're trying to go ahead and keep the youth healthy and strong. So we put them in a little box. We think putting them in a little box will keep them safe. It's just silly. It's just real silly and stupid. And it's like that's why sometimes when I look at
Mhm.
there's a TV show called I think it's called 16 and Pregnant. You want to talk about
Oh,
growing
yeah.
up real quick? I mean, tell a 16-year-old boy you're going to be a father.
Oh, gosh.
You know,
Gosh.
that's
I remember when, when you were born, they had to put you in the ICU unit.
mm,
Remember? Yeah.
yeah.
And
Of course I
there
remember.
was there was a 15-year-old girl who had given birth, who did not have any prenatal medical attention, and they put her baby in the ICU unit for observation, just to make sure the baby was okay. So she came in, she was feeding her baby while I was feeding you, and she was sitting next to me and we were talking. And so I said, well, what happened? She said, I was pregnant and I was afraid to tell my parents. My boyfriend got me pregnant. So she said that she was wearing blue jeans and big t-shirts, and she was a fat girl anyway, so nobody, noticed. So I said to her, well, what did you do when you went into labor? Did your parents think you were having acid indigestion or something? So she says, no, that's when I told them.
Oh my God. Like, what fears of childbirth did maybe you or Tati had?
Well, we didn't have any fears because we were not young. We were not real young, but we were in our late 20s, and we had done a lot of the things in life as single people that single people like to do. Got our degrees, traveled, whatever, hung out with friends, whatever. And we felt very, very ready at that point in our late 20s to be parents. But we were discussing this before the podcast about people who are actually afraid of having children. And I every now and then I hear about this. I've heard about women who are afraid of ruining their bodies with pregnancy.
Yeah, but age is going to ruin your body anyways. I think whatever. It's like men are afraid of the responsibility of having a child. Like, oh no, what am I going to do? I don't know. Work harder and try to make more money. It's like read a book. Just read a child book and try to figure it out from there. We're very adaptable creatures that can figure a lot of things out. We can figure out how to raise, a kid. There's so many books about it. That's where for me it's like I
And most of these books are written by people who've never raised a kid.
or it's like what was it? Was it the author that wrote Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus got divorced?
Yeah, women are for, yeah, yeah.
It's just the whole point. The whole point actually is that you have this fear of whether if you're going to be a good father or a good mother or whatnot. The answer is that if you're reading books to become a better father and mother, you've already passed that test of if you're going to be a better father and mother. Will the books help you? Probably not. But you making those decisions, you deciding to go ahead and read those books, shows the initiative you're willing to take and the sacrifices you're willing to make when it comes to parenthood.
Yeah, I have something funny when you mentioned about books. Okay, I remember in the 1980s, and the 90s, the toilet training books. Oh God, I read a few of them just out of curiosity. I never believed in toilet training because I always believed it was something very, very biological, and that every child, don't worry, will, according to their own body, will figure it out in due time for themselves, unless, God forbid, there's a serious physical problem, in which case you need to go to the doctor and find out what the problem is. There could be, but a normal child will pretty much figure things out for themselves. Well, there was this book on toilet training that the most ridiculous thing I saw in this book was that your child should fill a measuring cup and you should give them, either pennies or candies or something. And the more they fill the cup, the more pennies or candies you give them. That has to be the most idiotic, ridiculous thing I have ever seen. I mean, come on, can you really control how much urine you produce, please?
I think, I mean, I could see the understanding of that. Like, you're trying to do a positive reinforcement reward with children. You're trying to go ahead and be like, hey, if you can do this act for a longer period of time, you get a bigger reward. And therefore they're going to try their hardest to do that act longer. And then, like, eventually they'll get used to doing that act longer, because the whole point is that when kids use the bathroom, I would assume they only use the bathroom a little bit at first, because they're nervous or something, and they're not really sure what to do. So you're trying to encourage them to do it longer. I think that's the whole point of that thing to do.
Well, this goes back to what we said about education in general. Relax. Don't, like, also, like you said something before the podcast about ego in education. As a parent or as a teacher, don't let your ego get in the way. It's okay if the kid
hello?
If the kid doesn't get it right away, if the kid doesn't understand, be patient, find out what the kid is not understanding. Take it step by step. If you need to break it down into smaller steps, break it down into smaller steps. But this business, like my brother-in-law, I have a brother-in-law who, he was so funny. He was right. He said to me one day, there's only one problem about these books about toilet training. The kid didn't read it.
Yep. Well, when it comes to children and like having kids, what would you say is the most rewarding?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. Well, watching them develop, watching them as time goes on, discover the world around them. Watching is like, I was fascinated watching you kids switch to crawling, to switch to walking. You would start out with like all four, like on the floor. And then for a few weeks, you would bounce yourself back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on the floor to get a sense of balance. And then eventually, when you got that balance, what's fascinating is that there's nobody that's instructing you. I'm not instructing you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not moving you. I'm getting on the floor. I'm just watching you. And children instinctively learn how to balance themselves, and then eventually to get up on all fours, and then eventually to hold on to something and hoist themselves up. I remember one time watching Etty as a little baby, and she was like a newborn. She was only maybe 1 or 2 months old, and she was looking at her hand, and she was watching as she took her hand and she moved her hand from side to side, and then she opened up her hand and she closed it, and she opened it and she closed it. And it was like, hey, wow, look at this. This is amazing. It's called a hand. Look what it can do. I think kids do this naturally.
Yeah, they had this. I think I remember hearing some motivational speaker talking about, like, do you ever stop your kid from learning how to walk or talk because it's too hard for them.
Oh. And what I found fascinating, well, I took a course, my training is in voice, is in singing and voice. And when I first started my vocal training, I was taught to do these tongue exercises and these mouth exercises to basically limber up my tongue and limber up my mouth for singing and for the fluidity of especially singing in different languages. And when you guys were little babies, I noticed that before you started talking, you did those exercises naturally. One of the exercises was to stick out your tongue as far as you possibly can and keep doing it over and over again. You did that naturally. Another exercise was to move your tongue from side to side and, stretch your tongue out and then move it from side to side in front of your mouth. You guys did that naturally. You did those things, then rolling your tongue. And then from there, I noticed you would practice one tone for about a week and a half. You would go like ba 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 for about a week and a half. And then from ba, you would go maybe to a ga 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 or da 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 da. And this would go on for about a month, where each week it's like you concentrated on a different, practicing and isolating, practicing a different isolated tone. And then from there, you started to build into words.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I know somebody who was worried about their kid because their kid wasn't speaking, and their kid was a boy, was only about just turned 2.
That's not unusual for a boy, by the way.
It's not. It's not. Again, this goes back to our original conversation about putting pressure on children. It's like they will naturally learn how to speak, and boys naturally learn how to speak slower than girls. And it's just relax. Don't worry about it. Eventually they'll figure it out. There's no need to go ahead and take them to some speech therapist to make sure everything is okay and not to worry about it. It's a natural thing. They'll figure things out.
I do want to give a caveat to this, in that if a parent, let's face it, there can be, every now and then there can be a problem. Okay. It's not usual, but there can be. Okay. Now, if a parent's concerned, there's no reason why a parent, can't take their child for a speech evaluation just to make sure he or she is normal and that there's no speech impediments and no problems. It's, there's no reason they can't do that. It's perfectly okay. In fact, it's good because, if there is a problem, you want early intervention. But, what we want to say is, try to focus on the problem. Don't get hysterical about it, type thing.
Yeah.
If you want to check this thing out, there's nothing wrong with checking it out. But don't
get hysterical.
Don't be, because I think the kid's going to pick up on you being anxious over the situation. Yeah. And if you have a normal child, that could affect a normal child, also in a negative way. In other words, if the child has a problem, you do want to get help, but you don't want to seem overly anxious, especially in front of the child, because if your child is normal and there's no problem, you don't want your child to pick up on this anxiety.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something funny story though. There was a friend of mine, I hate to say it was really sad. She had a child who was born he had an actual a mouth deformity, which needed attention, needed operation, needed speech therapy. And she, thank God she got it for him. She got him the speech therapy and everything that he needed. And thank God he developed, it took, through therapy, he developed, thank God, normally just, but she was at my house once and she was complaining to me once that she said she wishes her son would speak more. Well, we're sitting at the Shabbos table and he starts to speak up and she yells at him, "Shut up, what do you know?"
Okay, so that is our time today, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much, Ema, for joining me in Jewish Boy Calls His Mother.
Okay, sweetheart, you have a good Shabbos.
You too.
Hey, love you.
I love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please like and share and find us on Facebook at Jewish Boy Calls His Mother Podcast. We are looking forward to hearing from you.